Alright, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rakak Wadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect. Alright, the name of this lesson is Always Stay Humble in this Truth. Alright. Okay, stay humble, don't be proud, because, pride, can make you fall. All right, also pride can, turn into a stumbling block. What could get you out of the street, you know? Okay. Pride goes before a fall. All right, for example, getting knowledge, of this truth, getting understanding, knowing a lot of precepts, and saying all that, could bring pride. Okay, nothing wrong with getting knowledge. You just have to be careful, and getting puffed up, because knowledge could puff it up. You have to guard yourself from that. Let's get our precept. Let's get that. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 8 and verse 1. It says, "Now as touching things offered unto idols, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge puffeth up, but charity edifieth." All right, just because you have knowledge, a lot of breakdowns, scriptures, all these things, doesn't mean to look down on your brother, Okay, instead you should love your brother, and help him to grow. All right, and just because that brother might not know a lot of breakdowns, or a lot of precepts, in the spirit, he could be, over you. All right, and that's why we have to stay humble. All right, all of us have to stay humble. Me and all those who in this truth. All right, okay. Let's see. Let's get this. Here. This is Philippians chapter 2. Actually, all of us have to stay humble. Slacky. Let me just get this. Ephesians. This is the book of Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 8. It says, "For by grace are ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves. It is the gift of power, not of works, lest any man should boast." All right. Because all of us deserve that. All right, since we sin, but sin, thanks to Yahushai, dying for Israel, we have grace. So, none of us should boast. All right. Okay, let's get this. This is the book of Philippians, chapter 2, and verse 3. It says, "Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves." Think of your brother doing better than yourself. All right. Verse 4. "Look not every man on his own things, but and every man." Let me read that over. "Look not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others." Looking out for your brother. Don't just look out for yourself. Study yourself, look out for your brother, Verse 5. "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Yahushua Mashiach." who being in the form of power thought it not robbery to be equal with power. All right, you know, Yahweh never thought himself to be equal, with the Lord Yahweh, you know. Okay, but made himself of no reputation. Yahweh never took no fame or nothing like that. Remember when they was gonna crown him king to be over the Jews, I believe he never took it, you know, and took upon himself the servant of a Slakia, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. All right, Yahushai was humble, or Yahushai was born in a major. All right, where animals does eating the hay. All right, which that was spiritual, right? Because like Yahushai is like the spiritual food. What we eating. This truth. All right, uh, verse 8, it says, and being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Okay, that's how humble Yahweh Shai was. All right, even unto death. You know. Okay, wherefore power also hath highly exalted him, and given him a name which is above every name. All right, which that name's Yahweh Shai. All right, now Jesus, Jesus is means earthquake. So that how that can how that could be as they say here, and given him a name which is above every name. How that could be above every name? It means earthquake. That makes no sense. All right, so it have to be Yahweh Shai. All right, that at the name of Yahweh Shai, every knee should bow, of things in heaven and things in earth and things under the earth. Right, and that every tongue should confess that Yahweh Shai Mashiach is Lord, to the glory of power the Father. All right, so because Yahweh Shai was humble, and obedient, unto the Lord Yahweh, even, and died on the cross, the Lord Yahweh, exalted him, okay, and gave him power over everything, all things. All right, so that's the mindset you had to have, to be humble, to have a mindset like Yahweh Shai, to have the humility like Yahweh Shai. All right, to see the book of Matthew, chapter 23, and verse 11. It says, but he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. All right, and whosoever shall exalt himself will be abased, and he that shall humble himself be exalted. All right, if you're humble, the Lord will exalt you. All right, okay, he will lift you up. Okay, the Lord doesn't deal with the proud. Right, he doesn't deal with the proud. Okay, let me see this precept here. Okay, this is Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 2. It says, when pride cometh, then cometh shame, but with the lowly is wisdom. All right, okay, be humble, Slakia, be humble. All right, okay, that's what the Lord like, a humble person, not no prideful, person who boasting up himself. All right, let's get this Matthew. Let's get Matthew This is the book of Matthew, chapter 18, and verse 2. And verse 2 it says, And Yahushua called a little child unto him, and set him in the midst of them, and said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted, and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as the little child, the same is the greatest in heaven. Right, so you had to be humble as a child. Alright, have that humility as like a child, and that's what the Lord want, a humble person, a person with humility. Alright, okay, not proud. Okay, let's look up the word, let's look up that word humility. Humility meaning. All right.
Humility.
Yeah, humility. It says it says the quality of having a modest view of one's value or importance. See some words here. Modesty, meekness. Okay, that's what the Lord like, a meek person. All right, that's what the Lord like. For example, um, this King Nebuchadnezzar. All right, he was I know one day he was looking at his kingdom, whatever. Okay, and he was being prideful. Or saying that he got all that power. Um, he got all that power, from it in it, just by himself. When really it's the Lord who gave him that power. That's why the Lord turn his mind into a cow. Okay, so the Lord do like proud people. All right. Okay, the Lord do like. Let's see here. Let's get this. Micah. This is Micah chapter 6, verse 5. Verse 8 slack here. 8. It says, He hath shewed thee, O man, what is good, and what doth Yahweh require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy power. All right, that what the Lord requires from you, humility. All right, that's what the Lord like. Okay, James. Let's get this James. This is the book of James, chapter 4, and verse 6. It says, But he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, Power resisteth the proud, but give grace unto the humble. Right, the Lord resists the proud. All right, the Lord don't deal with prideful men. That's why if you're prideful, the Lord will set you for a fall. Let's get that precept. This is Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 18. It says, Pride goeth before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall. Better it is to be of an humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud. All right, it's better to be humble. Better to deal with, go among humble men. I would, men who boasting up themselves and, feeling all things. All right. Yeah. Okay. The First Peter. Let's get this. This is First Peter chapter 5, verse 5. It says, "Likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder." All right, which that's order. You know. Okay. Being submit under the elder. Ye all of you be subject one to another, and be clothed with humility, for power resisteth the proud, and giveth grace to the humble. Right? Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of Yahweh, that he may exalt you in due time. All right, so be humble. The Lord will exalt you. You will lift you up. Okay, don't be in that mindset and proud of, being prideful. All right. Okay. So I hope this lesson was edifying unto the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahasham Yahushai, Bahasham Rakakodash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect. Wa Abad Babal Shalom.